Today on Off the Hinges, relax, pour yourself a drink, and unwind from your week as I answer your questions and share stories about this week's trait. I'm joined by a special guest, and I have my whiskey in hand. I'm so glad you made it. Are you ready? Let's slide into the vault.
All right. Welcome to Friday. This is a big what up? This is a big deal. This funny person waving on the side. This is the OG. So many of you all know her. If you don't, we might look quasi-similar. We do have the same birth parents, so that's helpful. I have two older sisters. This is the middle of the three of us. This is so exciting.
Child.
Man, y'all are in for it. First one thinks of it, second one does it, third one gets blamed for it. 100%. The proverbial middle child. I didn't do it. Josh did it. She didn't do any of it. We're exploring creativity, and man, y'all are in for a treat. This is great. I love this person so much, but she is a ridiculous human being in the best of ways. Introduce yourself to our wonderful guests.
I'm Micah.
You sure are.
Josh's sister.
Man, that was such a great introduction. Thanks for that. That was good. You're so creative. That's why I invited you. Hi, I'm Micah. Welcome. She has a big sister. She will unpack more when I get to asking her to give a little bit of her story. So this is an unprompted question.
Oh,
I mean, we hope we hear more, or she'll just awkwardly sit there in silence and then we'll get nothing. So that also could happen. Whatever she wants to create for us. But, lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. So this is a fun little news drop. We are so close yet so far away, because I am physically sitting not in my home in Norway. I am sitting in Norfolk, Virginia, which is not that so close, but it's not really. It's right there. So I'm recording this from a very insanely whirlwind of a trip that has been laced with ridiculousness, which doesn't matter to share. But oh my goodness. So here helping one of the Joint Force Commands in NATO with some stuff for planners. And so I'm recording this with my sister one state away. And this is the first time I have been back to the United States in almost 3 years since my family and I went to Norway. So we're like, but still sort of
in the same place.
But you get both of us, so you're in for a treat. So we're going to run through some questions, but before we get started with the traditional off the top, what are you thankful for this week?
Yeah. Okay. So I love these questions. I'm going to zoom out a little bit on this one. I am heading into this week just super grateful for life, man. Like the seasons, the stories, the celebrations, all of it. Like this last weekend was Matt's birthday. And actually on his birthday, we went to the wedding of like one of his best buds from like elementary school. I mean, they've known each other like their entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so cool. Like he has an amazing story individually from, his now new wife, and combined their story is incredible. And it was just one of those nights where you just come home with like that little ball of golden light in your chest, right? And you just like feel so grateful for just like, man, life, and like the people that get dropped into your life, and the stories and the places, that those lives and those friendships take you, and those relationships. And more so for him than for me, because I kind of just sat there with like a group of like people that he went to high school with that I didn't know, but it was fun to meet new people. But it was just a really cool experience. And I think I walked away just heading into this week, just like really grateful for just life and its beauty and all of it.
A little ball of golden light in your chest.
You know the feeling when you're just like, oh, I'm just so warm and fuzzy and I just feel happy and good.
I do know the feeling. That's a very creative description. Nice. I smell what you're stepping in. Okay.
And
what? Yeah. So creative. So before we started, I got to share this too. These are the conversations that we have as siblings. She's like, "Hey, how does everything look? Is my backdrop okay? You know, kids are in bed, everything's quiet. I think this looks good." I said, "Yeah, aside from like the poop that's smeared on the wall, I think your backdrop looks fantastic." And she said, "Well, that's mine. And I created this just for this creative episode." So,
Frame around it, date it,
and
then it's
yeah.
art.
And for those of you listening to the podcast instead of watching this awesomeness on YouTube, there's your pimp to go watch it. So there you have it.
100%.
So there's your nice insert for the random pre-recording sessions that we just needed to share with you, because that's what siblings talk like. If you talk like this, you're not weird. We all do it. And if you say you don't, you're a liar. Knock it off. Don't lie. Don't lie. Come on. It's cool. We're cool. Everything's cool. This is fun. Number 2. What are you learning?
Well, how to care for a bearded dragon. So,
You heard it first here.
Little context here, folks. Julian, who is our youngest, it just turned 6 in January. And for the months leading into his birthday, announced to the family that he wanted a pet, and he wanted this pet to be a bearded dragon. We've never owned a reptile before. There was large learning curve, lots of research. Matt, of course, built the enclosure, from scratch, the whole thing. So yeah, we are now the proud owners of this giant lizard, and learning how to care for it is it's what I'm learning these days.
I can imagine that doesn't always smell good. I can just,
Not great.
Not great.
Yeah.
Like lizards and things of that nature. I just, being
hot
a boy.
lamps.
Yeah.
Baking.
Just hot, baking, stinky things, living in their own feces.
Skin shedding.
Yeah,
We actually have a Ziploc bag right now. This is gross.
That's great. This is not gross.
With lizard skin in it. It's fine.
It's like, yeah, you should change his name to Goldmember, and he just keeps little pieces of himself. Yes.
His name is Hugo, for anyone wondering.
It's not Goldmember, it's Hugo. That's a good point. Yes.
He actually is super cute.
Aside from all the stinky shedding Ziploc baggy incidents.
Yeah. I think as a family, we're just learning how to care for this new member.
I mean, how do you care for such a thing? What are the things you do? Okay.
Lots of crickets, lots of kale, the occasional roach.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Do you catch the roach and the crickets, or?
We buy them from the local, reptile shop that we got him at. So he's like a rescue. He was not really taking good care of at his previous home. So we got him from this pet shop. He's I don't know, 5 or 6 years old.
This is a full thing.
This is a full thing.
He comes from a battered home. Send our love to Hugo. Hugs and kisses.
Yes.
To his shedding flaky self.
He's thriving in his new home. He's so happy here.
Well,
he's the most chill, low key kind of guy. His personality is perfectly matched for Julie, and it's real sweet.
It's good. It's good. Bearded dragons. There you go. There's your sales pitch. There's your plug. Who knew? I'm glad you're learning that. All right. How do you hope to grow and transform as you find time for rest and reflection heading into the weekend?
Yeah. I don't know how much rest there will be this weekend. It's kind of a big weekend. Mom's having her outpatient surgery. So I'm kind of on call for that all weekend long. But I think in light of that and, a couple other things I have going on, just really slowing down and practicing kindness, and just connection in really meaningful ways, and kind of just leaning into what that looks like this weekend. I've got a little organized a little neighborhood walk with some of the neighborhood moms on Sunday mornings, so that should be fun too, to kind of get to know some people that I kind of know on the outskirts a little bit, but get to know him a little bit better and walk and chat and strap on our ankle weights and go sweat together. And
Do you have a leash for Hugo that you take him on these walks with you?
what if
Or
I, what if he didn't
the
know?
question is for you.
Lizard.
Don't answer the question with a question. I'm asking you, do you do these things? Not what if you did. Do you?
We have a harness for him. Yes.
A full body harness?
It's like a little harness that straps onto him. We also have a backpack for him, and Julian wears it on his back and can like take him places. When we went to the reptile shop on Sunday to pick up, this week's batch of crickets for his meals, this is a real life conversation I'm having right now. He wore the little backpack with
Julian
the
did.
beard. Yes, with a
He
little
took
beard.
Hugo to select his meal for the
Yeah,
week.
yeah. Pick out your crickets, man.
So that's how you take a bearded dragon grocery shopping,
Yeah,
is what you're telling me. Does he pick out his kale also, or just the livestock that he eats?
just the live crickets.
Okay. I'm learning a lot about this now.
See?
I will not tell Alessia that we had this conversation, because then I will be pressured.
Just edit this part right out.
Or just don't show her. That's right. She's going to grow up and say, all these years I could have had it, and you kept it from me.
Yes. Why are you holding
Yeah.
that on me, Dad?
Well, I guess I'm a terrible
Not
father. That's why.
groovy. Not groovy.
Not cool. I could have had the whole harness and backpack and everything.
Yeah.
All right. So now the question that maybe you'll answer, maybe you won't. We're about to find out. But I'm going to put it up there for you anyway. What's your story?
Oof. She's a doozy.
Mm?
So, born and raised in a loving, strong Christian home. This also feels really strange for me to be like telling my story to you because I'm like, you've been there for like all of it.
There will be other people. So, yes, I know
I know.
this story, but you can reshare.
You do know the story.
I do.
And I say loving and strong because I think being Christians and the emphasis on like the strong family unit, it wasn't like a passive afterthought, right? Like it was kind of like our identity, right? Like very much a part of like in the forefront of like who we were and not really something people like came to find out, right? It was like not like information people stumbled upon as
Right.
they got to know us. It was kind of like how we moved through life and interacted in our communities and in the spaces we took up. And moved to Charlotte when I was 9, from outside Detroit, Michigan. And that's when we began homeschooling, 4th grade through high school. 5th and 6th grade probably was when we, I think maybe, connected with some of the like just absolute greatest, like classically trained piano teachers, Jane Seacrest and Zedra Romanis.
Play. Hold on. Play for me, Jane. You got to inject that in the story. That's fantastic. I'm totally interrupting parts of this.
Without the dramatic fall on.
The flair of the dramatic with this woman. Oh my gosh. Jane Seacrest was such a good teacher, though.
So pure. Oh
Yeah.
my God. And I think that's kind of really what launched my love for music and like specifically playing the piano. Played all through high school, at a competitive level. We can kind of pull on that string a little more when we come back to creativity.
We will.
Finished high school with, some scholarship options for like music and piano and all of that. But at this point, like at 18, I couldn't really see what like a lifetime in music would look like, honestly. And I think, on a more real level, 4+ years of just like intense music theory at this point and performances and practices and like all the pressure that comes with that was just like a big woof. Like,
I know you won't forget your story, so I'm gonna interrupt there to say For
Yeah.
those who might not be as familiar, I know exactly what you're talking about because we lived that together. And I mean, Micah
Intense.
was and still is like a freak of nature gifted. I would say all of us had an aptitude for it, but and she'll shake her head or whatever. You can just discard all of that. But incredibly good. So with the scholarship opportunity to Queens College in Charlotte, which is a performing arts, liberal arts type school, top notch opportunity. And Zidra Romanis, who was sort of our second teacher after Jane Sechrist, is just a world class, and I say that in the most sincere sense of the word, world class pianist, Latvian descent, just a brilliant soul, so gifted in classical music and teaching and her heart for it. Oh my goodness. Just
What?
her back-to-back baby grands, I can just see them as we go in there for
Wow.
practices.
What
But
a gift to sit
paint,
under her.
oh yeah, she's such a fascinating human.
Yeah, next
Oh,
level.
but give a little bit of a flavor and a backdrop to when you say exhausted from 4 years of competitive piano in high school.
Yeah.
Paint that canvas a little bit for people who might not be familiar so they can appreciate what those words mean, because I know what it means, and it's a lot. So give a quick
Yeah.
run through of what that is if you could.
I mean, I think at the level that we were like engaged in competitions and stuff, there was one that was like the guild. Remember that one? And you had to learn like had to memorize like whatever it was, 10 pieces at one level, or like maybe more than that at a different level. And um
Right.
not only memorize like the pieces from, different periods and different, genres and styles and all of that, but like the scales and the cadences and then like all of that that kind of go with each piece. Um and then there was like actually like this written like music theory test. Do you remember that one?
It
Where
was
you would
intense.
it was so intense.
Oh,
Like
so do
I'm
you
literally
remember
like
this? Oh,
sweating just thinking about it. Like, oh
it's
God.
it's fascinating how smart I feel like I used to be, and I've forgotten so much of it. But
Yeah.
yes, so these written tests for the listeners, so you would get, let's say, a certain key. You would have your bass clef, and your treble clef, which is written music. If you see the lines on the top and the bottom of the page, and it would have whether sharps or flats, and the combination of those make up the key that you are getting this music in. And then you might get questions like, first, list what key this piece is written in, and then transpose it into this, and this, and this key, or whatever. So you would have to transpose these pieces and then talking about cadences and what are the beats per measure and what is the count. And so just to the fullest extent that you could classically interpret music in theory,
Yeah.
you would get assessed in this. So that's what Mike is saying. And it's like, it's
So
intense.
yeah.
It's beyond intense. Yeah. So memorizing pieces, and then you would
And you get
memorize
like
more.
one shot.
You
Like
do.
you sit in front of this panel of judges and you play your pieces and you like do the whole performance and all of that. And like that's it. Like if you screw it up or if you forget a bar, if you forget like
Mm.
your finger slips or it's just like, oh God, it's done.
The level of perfectionism that was expected and put into that was, so it is intense. And when we say 10 pieces, this is like highly recognized top line classical pieces that aren't short. They're from multiple genres. Like this is competitive level classical music that you're memorizing and then playing from memorization. And they might say, play this piece. And so out
Mm-hmm.
of 10, you're playing what they call out,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully to perfection. So like that level of, I think, just mental focus it's intense. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that didn't just fall on deaf ears of people, because when you say, oh, 4 years and I'm tired, there's a reason why I think that's formed a lot of your creativity, but also like some of your skills and your
Yeah.
focus on things. Yeah. So continue, but that's a lot in those little words there. That was a lot
Yeah.
people needed to hear. Like that's a lot that you were really gifted in, to be honest.
Thank you. I think it just kind of also lent itself to like a lot of burnout too, where you just like you just go
Yeah.
so hard and then you're just like, is this fun anymore?
Maybe not.
am I still enjoying this?
So high school piano scholarship opportunities, feeling tapped out from
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I did. And I mean, I started working, and I still stayed connected locally, for a while, like playing piano here and there at different,
Mhm.
events around town and stuff. But I think that kind of just like unintentionally just like fizzled out, as like life and schedule and work kind of took more center stage. Yeah. Um, had a really like a few different really incredible job opportunities, ranging from like admin work to, x-ray technician school and transitioning into working into full-time ministry, in like a ton of different capacities and positions. And this is where I would meet Matt. We worked on staff at a church together, for several years. So, then 2008-ish to like 2012. Um, man, can I swear on this podcast?
You can do whatever you want.
Okay. You familiar with the term, the phrase, the shit hit the fan?
Yeah,
Uh, yeah.
sure am. That poop went flying.
Humor has to be a core value, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, but in all seriousness, like in those years, give or take a few years here and there, um, I would walk through like what are to date the darkest years yet, and I would
Hmm.
learn a lot of lessons. I would learn a lot about myself. Um, and not to be too vague, like those are the years where, we would learn about Dad's affair. I got engaged to Matt. Um, we called off the wedding, which felt, kind of somewhat public too at the time because of both of our positions,
Hmm.
um, which, added just like a layer of, you know, heaviness to it.
Right.
2000, that was 2009, 2010, Dad taking his life, and just like a lot of heaviness, just like a lot of disappointment, um, a lot of grief, a lot of fear, a lot of confusion, a lot of anger and resentment, um, a lot of broken dreams, a lot of letting go, and a lot of just like life going on too, just like putting one foot in front of the other, when everything blows up, like life doesn't stop.
Hmm.
Um, and like, I think, what do you do like when the story goes in a direction that, if you're being honest, you would have never scripted, obviously. And you find yourself in the middle of events that are happening that you feel wholly unequipped for. And not only just like unequipped, but like, man, actually afraid of, right? Like, and that's where I found myself. And I think in those moments, like you can kind of shut down, and kind of go into survival mode. And
Hmm.
I think I think there is certainly a time and a place for that too, right? Um, but I think you can't stay there. And so on the other side of that, for me, um, I just felt this deep knowing, um, of just like, man, this is bigger than me. Um, and what does it look like for me to lean into this pain and this discomfort, and this completely like unknown and uncharted place, and uncover and live a story that I actually do want to tell. Um,
Hmm.
and I think for me that looked like just like heaps of love, and grace and forgiveness, and tears and a lot of scary, hard conversations and lots of therapy. And just like being fully in the shit, you know?
Mm.
Um, and knowing that one day it will be good and it's not now. Um, but I will look back and I realize like this isn't the whole story. It never was the whole story. Um, and as overwhelming and all consuming as like this season might feel right now, and it did. Um, you know, in the nature of seasons is, you know, the good and the bad, they don't last forever. Um, so yeah, fast forward a few more years and we are married and we have Ruby, who is
Mm-hmm.
almost 8, and Julian, who just turned 6, and raising our own little family here in Charlotte still, which is beautiful in and of itself, you know. And yeah, 3 chickens, a dog, a bunny, a bearded dragon later.
There you
Here we
go.
are. Yeah.
Here you are.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. There's so much.
Nutshell story. There's so much more. There's so much more to
There is
unpack.
so much more, but I think
It could be a full different episode.
it could be. And before I ask you this next question, I think there's so much of a thing that resonates with creativity coming on the heels of what you just heard. So for the listeners, and I think when I framed this topic, and I try to be very thoughtful in the questions that I use to frame and allow people to explore a certain virtue. And when I asked everyone with my rock star creative genius, Aria, my oldest daughter, and we did our framing for that, she's just adorable. If you haven't watched that, you just need to fix yourself and go check her out because she's so cute. It is
That's
totally unsolicited, totally unprompted. Just an adorable response from her. And she's so excited. It was really cute. Once the camera went off and I was done recording, she said, "Dad, that was so fun. Thanks." Like, she's just such a happy, thankful little girl. She said, "That was so fun. I love doing that." And also, you know what I thought was really cool? I didn't even practice anything I was going to say with you. She said,
Ooh.
"You wanted me to talk about creativity." And I promise, like almost verbatim, she said it like this. She goes, "You wanted me to talk about creativity. Guess what? I created that whole thing from the top of my head when we just talked." Yeah.
Right here, baby.
Yeah. She's like, "That was off the cuff. You're welcome." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"God, you're such a stud, rock star." But when we had that talk, the question that we framed was, how is your thumbprint visible on the problems that you face and overcome? And that's really intentional because a problem can be daunting, it could be exciting, but most often, and I won't steal any of Micah's thunder, but most often you're creating. I won't say that you are self made. I think that's BS. Nobody is self made alone because everything we have is a gift. I really believe that. Your gifts and your abilities don't come from yourself. Your very existence came from 2 people who lovingly like went through the act to make you. Go read about the birds and the bees. You aren't here on your own effort or accord, and you aren't sustained on your own effort or accord. But you do have the gift of creating and being creative in the image of the one who made you. So in that, I just really find it interesting to explore, how is your thumbprint? How is your unique gifting and purpose? Like when you walk away from maybe a problem set, maybe it is the dark times, maybe it is the high times of life. Whatever problem you are facing or the unknown you're facing, when you get through that, are you leaving your unique thumbprint? Or would it look really similar to someone else's? And I think creativity can take a whole new meaning when you don't just simply think of it in the creative arts mindset, or I made a painting or a drawing. There is so much creativity that goes into life itself and navigating it that I love asking first someone's story, especially related to creativity, because those deep times and those dark times that you just sort of walked us through briefly, I know what those were like. To a certain extent, I can appreciate them even though I didn't experience them the way you did. And I can look at your love for creativity and creating and exploring the new and the possible. And I think that's what makes you such an awesome guest for this topic, is because you fit that really well. And especially now your role as a mom and how you leverage creativity with your family and children. So I'm excited for this, because now we're about to step into the really good stuff of exploring this together now that we've laid the foundation for this. So next question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you frame or describe this idea of creativity? And I'm going to stack it with this one too, because I think they're connected.
Okay.
So let me know if you get all of this. After you frame it, what misconceptions or myths would you want to debunk about creativity? So how do you frame it? And then what misconceptions do you want to kick out of here related to this topic?
Let's go.
Let's get it.
Let's go. Okay, so I think for me, when I frame creativity, I think, to create um, is to bring something into existence, right? Like that wasn't there before. Um, and I think to your point, that can be a conversation with a friend. It can
Mm,
be a solution to a problem. It can be a note that you write to a friend. It can be going into the kitchen and trying a new recipe. It can be a new workout routine. It can be like, hey, today I'm going to take this new route home from work and just like actually look at the stuff around. I mean, look at the road, definitely, but like
that's
pay
helpful.
attention.
I'm going to take
Pay
this new
attention.
route and close my eyes. And
No,
Jesus, take the wheel. Don't do that.
Micah
Terrible
told me to
advice.
be quiet when I drive. No, but I think it can be any of these. Like it can be moving furniture around in a room, and whatever these things are that you're creating and that you're making. I don't think it has to be. I think what you make does not have to be witnessed, and I
Mhm.
don't think it has to be like an artistic achievement, right? And I think by stripping it down and taking this really just like base simplistic approach really opens up like all of the possibilities for us to engage and participate in creativity all around us, like no matter where you are on the creative spectrum, um like without all of the rules and the boxes that we ironically have put around creativity in terms of like what it is,
Mhm.
um and who gets to have it, right? Like it's for everyone. Like you are inherently creative just by being human. you might not
Yes.
be like you might not be like formally making art, um but just by being alive, like whether consciously or subconsciously, like just by being alive, like you are actively participating in this ongoing process of creation. And I think framing it with this viewpoint for me, um, has been really important and really helpful, because whether we realize it or not, or, can even identify this, but I think I think it carries a whole bunch of ambiguity and assumptions, right? Like mysterious, maybe even somewhat intimidating to some people. Um, and I think when we strip that down in our minds, and just like make it accessible to everyone, right? It
Mhm.
stops being this big, intimidating like thing. And you realize, like, oh, it's not just for the cool people, or it's not just for the Enneagram fours, or it's not just for the extroverts or the introverts. Like, there's no wrong way to be creative. Like, there's only your way. Um, So yeah, I think that framing and that viewpoint for me has been really helpful in just like accessing it in the everyday. Um,
Mhm.
I think so then like the question really becomes less about like what is creativity and who gets to have it, and more about what's holding us back from engaging with it, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think like that's kind of where the real fun and the real work can kind of start to take off, you know?
Mm-hmm. So
Any
what?
thoughts?
No, well, I mean, what I hear there then is that if I hear this correctly, the myth that you would try to debunk is that someone that might say, well, I'm just not creative. Is that what you're
Yeah,
trying to say?
how often do you hear that? Like, "Oh my gosh, I could never do that. I'm so not creative." And I think those are like those are two separate thoughts. Maybe you couldn't
Yes.
do that. Maybe you couldn't do that thing that you see someone else doing, but you are also creative in your own right and in your
Right.
own way. And um I think by comparing ourselves to other creators or other people's finished work of art or other things that they're making or they're doing or
Mhm.
um I think we rob ourselves of the joy of tapping into our own personal level
Right.
of creativity.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah, and I think what that makes me think of is the role that we have in, and hang with me for a second on this, because if we buy into this, which I do wholesale, I completely agree with your perspective on this, that
I
creativity
was
isn't
about to
just,
say, like, this is just my framing. This may or may not work for you.
no,
And if it does, great. If something resonates, but if not, like, just take what
yeah.
you want and leave the rest.
Well, people that listen may not like it and they can let us know in the comments, but joke's on y'all because you're not talking to us right now. We're talking. And right now we both are agreeable. So you got to roll with it for a second. But let's say that if you're listening to this, you might accept that perspective and say, yeah, I think we all have a creative side. We can create something that didn't exist before. And we have gifts to bring something into this world and bring things to bear. So when it's more of a holistic approach to creativity and not just a tangible object that you had to build or draw or music, that it's not all just about the liberal arts mindset. That is part of it, and that's a beautiful part of it, but it's not just that. There's so much outside of that. So then I would challenge people to think of this. Your interpersonal relationships and your encounters with other people, we are not thinking machines. People are feeling beings that also think and act. So before anything, this is the essence of emotional intelligence. This is why it's so big. But it's proof in so many things that you see in life that we respond to some sort of inject in something that we sense. Our senses, our emotions, the feelings that we get from things influence how then we interpret and think and act. And you can create such a beautiful thing in other people just by words of recognition. So let's say I'm talking to Micah, and let's say Micah was one of these people that she just debunked that says, I'm not creative. It takes a very attentive person in a relationship or in a friendship to maybe highlight ways that you see a very unique gift and creativity in someone else. And there's a lot of power in that. So you have, in your own ability to speak encouragement, you are creating a feeling or a sense of purpose in someone else. So even that ability to honor and encourage others, you are creating a feeling that maybe did not exist before. So that act alone, if you are just someone who's really good with your words and with your connections, you are creative because you are creating in someone else maybe an even more lasting thing than just fleeting art or structures. You're creating an impression on someone's life. And this isn't just getting existential or theoretical on it. I really believe that. So
Sure.
you can use such a creative gift to shape the way people feel about themselves and their worldview and how they view life itself. So
Yeah.
that creativity is so much, that's just an example of sort of what I heard through that. It's so much more to me than just a tangible thing I made.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe those aren't even as impactful as the things that you can create in someone's heart and mind and soul when you speak into those spaces. So I would encourage you all to look for those opportunities to speak that into other people where you see their creativity and it might help them really reframe this in that aspect. So back over to you. That's sort of how I heard that as you spoke.
100%. It's so funny because you and I have talked about this too, in months past, but that concept has just been so near and dear to my heart, too. And I think it's just this like stating the obvious maybe, but just like telling people the specific good that you do see and appreciate in them,
Mm-hmm.
um, that you know is near and dear to their heart. And I think that does take a really important element of being a good active listener, right? And just having this awareness, within your relationships and really paying close attention. And I think, when you kind of zoom out and look at creativity, so much of what creativity is just paying attention and just really being in tune,
Mm-hmm.
um, with what is going on around you and listening. And I think, if you can speak into that in someone else's life in what areas are important to them, whether it's I see you running all around town, dropping your kids off at soccer practice and doing this, and I just think that you're like a really good mom.
Mm-hmm.
Or I see you working really hard, um, like to support your family, and I see that, and you're really good at that. I You're really good at, I have this neighbor who she is like incredible at creating events that connect people and just like bringing people together. And she is one that like, that is something that is so near and dear to her. And I think the beauty in that is you don't get to, maybe you do get to know why, but maybe you don't know why that thing is what that person is so passionate about. Um, but when you speak life into that and it just kind of blows some wind in their sails, I think calling out the good in that, can be so beautiful and can be really, really
Mm-hmm.
meaningful to people. Um, and it just gives them that, like, that spark to believe in themselves,
Right.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. And I
I love
recall Aria's response that almost closed out our chat at the beginning of the week on this was so cool. Like her perspective when I asked her, yeah, can you just sort of tell me about this? And I said, what excites you about being creative or creating things? And just, it was such a nonchalant, honest response of just like, yeah, I just like that I can just, create things on off the top of my head without anyone telling me what to do. And, you just go with it. And
just go with it, man.
as I re-listened to my own daughter articulate, it
Yep,
really struck me deep. I was like, oh my God, she has so much wisdom as a child
yep,
on this topic. It really like took me back. I'm like, to listen to how my 8-year-old views the world of being creative. I was so blessed with that conversation with her. I was like, I'm so glad I talked to you about this today because it really dropped scales off my own eyes of how we get into such a rut or we get into such a set way and we get so biased and sort of weighed down with our own perspectives and our own jaded life as an adult, and to re-engage into the lens of a small child who just has so much excitement for life and just wants to explore. And that is part of the creativity. And for Aria, it wasn't just about artwork. She does love art, but she talked about creating the route she was going to climb when she did the rock wall, creating new ways to do math problems. And yes, I teach
yep,
some of this up for her, but she was excited to discuss how she explores actual hard problems with
yep,
creativity and how people around her that encourage that help her through that.
yep,
And it's just like, man, she is just chock full of wisdom today. So it's just,
yep.
I would encourage you, like, talk with a little kid sometime and ask him, like, how do you like, ask her, use Aria's and mine example as maybe a template of questions and ask a kid, ask your child, and listen to what they say. And it might rock your world.
Mm-hmm,
It really might.
for
So,
sure.
that's good stuff. Okay. Next question. What stories or thoughts do you have on conformity's relationship to underused creativity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to back up a little bit and kind of, so whenever I'm unpacking like a concept or a virtue, I think it's helpful for me to kind of consider like what other virtues um, or forces kind of like sit close to it
Mm-hmm.
and like work in harmony with it. Um, and then kind of what sits on the other side of the fence, right? And maybe not working like in direct opposition, but um, it might sit close to it, but it's, it's on the other side of the fence, right? And I think when I think about creativity, those things that sit really close are curiosity and open-mindedness and um, courage and risk taking, and there's a patience and awareness and appreciation of beauty and connection to yourself, to others. Um, and I think, when I hear conformity and think about conformity's relationship to underused creativity, um, my mind goes to just like a set of rules, right? And I think rules by nature are a limitation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think any rule is worth testing. Um, I think challenging your assumptions. I think there can be a lot of wisdom and a lot of depth in questioning rules. Um, and just this general asking why. I think that posture of curiosity and wonder like is at the heart of creativity in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think creativity by nature is this freedom of self-expression, right? So where that relationship is with conformity, those two things attempting to coexist, I see that lending itself to a lot of disappointment and frustration and resentment and just stifling that creativity. I think that rigid thinking of conformity is just in direct opposition to this being open-minded posture that creativity has, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like creative thinking is flexible thinking. It's not rigid, and it's not, um so I think when I think about conformity, I also think of just this idea of just blind obedience, um, and not challenging ideas and not thinking critically. It's this is the way we've always done things, or this is how it is, or because I said so. And I don't think that that lends itself to being an environment of nourishing and
Mm-hmm.
fostering this encouraging self-expression and this ability to explore just like new ideas and new concepts, um, which I think ultimately leads you to like learning to listen and to kind of trust your gut in that inner voice, which is ultimately what I believe you rely on so heavily in the creative process, right? Like that's kind of like your guide. Um, so I don't know if that answers your question in a roundabout way. What are your thoughts on conformity's relationship to underused?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think it paints a picture to me, which isn't a thought that's original to me, but I really agree with it, of these virtues, if you view them as strengths, and a lot of people that are clients of mine that I've coached, and we've talked about this as well. You can have a strength that can have a scale or a spectrum on it of a nice balance, and you strike a nice chord of creativity. You can also have a strength that if you underuse it, it looks like one thing, and if you overuse it, it looks like another thing. And the under and overuse of a well-balanced strength is out of balance, and I don't think it's healthy. But I think it can reframe words that might have negative connotations, and rightfully so, in a healthier light. To say someone who is just a conformist, I think just actually hasn't really learned how to fully leverage and apply creativity. So from a fear of being creative, they conform, or they are in an environment that does not want them to be creative, so they smother and force them to conform. And conformity is polar opposite and totally in the face of creativity and originality, and I actually believe authenticity. Conformity can be really smothering, and being eccentric is also equally harmful, because let's take it from a group perspective for a minute, and we've talked about this before. But if I'm leading a team or a group or even a family, it doesn't matter. If we have a thing that we're trying to figure out and solve together, or some task at hand, creative thoughts are, it's the essence of creative and critical thinking. I teach this a lot to top military planners across Joint Force Commands. I'm at Joint Force Command Norfolk right now, talking with their top planners and senior leaders about revising their regional plan, which that might not mean a lot to non-military people, but it's a really important step they're having to do. Some very senior planners that have done this for a very long time, me and a couple of colleagues, are helping advise and run a workshop to work them through this problem set that they're facing. It's a real plan. It's a real thing they need to struggle through and figure out. And we're helping them with this. But at the beginning of our workshop, we always start with framing for them the importance from a behavioral aspect of creative and critical thinking. Because before I can solve a problem or even understand how to frame a problem, I need to appreciate biases. I need to appreciate the importance of divergent thinking. So to frame this idea of the balance of creating and critiquing from just a thought process, when we apply creative thinking, we are generating new ideas. And that's really beautiful. And that divergence is needed. And you don't want to smother that. You don't want to impregnate that with, adulterated thoughts of what that should look like. That needs to be very pure and organic to the individual. And you want that in a team setting. But there comes a point in time where I need some action, and I do need to produce something, and I do need to align this creativity and find some synergy in it. So it is a leader's job to be attentive to when that divergence needs to turn into convergence. And then you can apply critical thinking, which balances creativity nicely and goes, okay, now let's be critical to judge what we have generated and see what is fit for our purpose. And now I need to reel all of these stray cat in. They've had fun running free. Let's bring them back into the fold, and we need to focus this. So I think I see it most personally when you have a lot of good idea fairies, a lot of creative ideas, but if you can't bring that into bear towards a purpose, you get a lot of stray voltage that could have been good, but without purpose or trajectory, it doesn't really accomplish much. So then creativity and eccentricity continuing on till kingdom come, actually what purpose is that serving? So I think a good balance is a moment where you can be divergent and then where you can converge that creativity into a meaningful purpose. So I really like your way that you framed the smothering aspect that you might see in conformity, though. And as you were speaking, this hit me. And for those of you who have grown up with a faith background or a Christian background, I want to offer you a different perspective on a very familiar verse. And this isn't me taking it out of context, but this is actually the way that I read this verse as someone who likes to be creative and make my own thoughts and ideas and things. So a lot of people hear the verse that says, don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed by renewing your mind. And I love that verse, and I agree wholeheartedly with that verse. But a lot of people hear the first half of that verse as a very smothering, don't be conformed. And they take it as like this list of rules. And I'm not saying that it's not a directive. It's a very direct statement. And I agree. Like, you shouldn't be conformed to what culture or this world or others expect. But when you view conformity as an underuse of creativity, and you hear these words that are coming from your creator through scripture that's saying, view it from someone who's trying to set you free into your own creativity. So view it like a parent who's saying, hey, Aria, you are so creative and gifted. Don't just do what your friends are doing. I actually want you to transform your entire culture by just renewing your mind with fresh new ideas that only you could have because you are so original. And when I hear that verse, that's how I hear it. I hear it as an opportunity, not as a threat. I hear it as an open door to possibilities that no one else could even experience without me there. So don't be conformed because you're limiting yourself. Be transformed by renewing your mind. And when you renew your mind, your creativity is something that no one else has that thumbprint but you. And I think it's just the way that you maybe even read scripture. How much is that impressed from what others have told you it means? And maybe you can actually read this with a different creative lens, not out of context that says, what's it actually trying to say to me here? So I think it's a cool perspective when you look at it from a truly creative heart.
Yep.
And I think that is the heart of the one who made us, is he wants us to not feel smothered in the gifts he gave us. He wants us to feel free.
Yep.
To leverage them for what our actual purpose is.
Yep.
So that's how I sort of view that balance of conformity, eccentricity, creativity from a strength perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on these things?
I think it's really important to that when you're asking yourself, like, what is holding me back from just like taking that first step? There's a quote that I think it's attributed to Socrates, maybe, know thyself. And just really simply just find out what you love and like what brings you joy. And what gives you that spark or takes your breath away, right? Or like just follow that and seek that out. And honestly, I mean, to your point of not conforming, no one knows that but you. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also worth noting that, whatever that is probably going to change and evolve over time, right? Um, there's another quote that I love that says, no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, when you're exploring these questions, I think it's really important and really valuable to allow yourself, to change and to grow and to embrace whatever new version of yourself you actually end up discovering along the way,
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think there's just so much beauty in just that journey in and of itself. Um, and that process of just like that discovery.
Right. That's so good. We'll move on, but we can unpack that for a long time because I love that idea of embracing that you will and should change. I
Yes,
actually believe
not.
that.
Yes.
Not just like, oh, you look older with more wrinkles or what's happening, like you need to go to the gym more, but I think your character in a good way, you should look remarkably different as you mature through life. And if you look the same, that should be that should be somewhat concerning if people can't see a change in you. So I've had people say like, "Oh, you've changed." And my honest response to them, regardless of how they meant that, is I say, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for noticing. And I actually mean that sincerely. So like,
Put
that
in a
should be
lot
a
of work
bench.
to change.
Put in a lot of work. Yeah, I didn't say you were going to like it, but thank you. Yeah. How does divergence relate to and help empower creativity?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just the essence of that just ability to think differently, right? Um, and and the power that's in that, and just allowing those ideas to kind of take shape and take form kind of wherever they land, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that one?
I agree with you. And I think I already shared some that I think divergence is so important. It is divergent in generating before you converge to a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
That word specifically, there's lyrics to a Lecrae song called Cry for You. And it's the way that he used these words resonates so deeply with me. I just love it because he's talking about things that are just different that can actually do a good purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking about, I could never be everything that you want to see, but crooked sticks draw straight lines. Just look at me.
Hmm.
Sit with that for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And this won't get edited out because y'all need to see that there is pain in the change that needs to happen in life to really become who you should be. And you will have people in the face of you that will doubt you and question you and laugh at you. But I think that courage, you associated some beautiful virtues to creativity. It takes boldness, it takes courage, it takes curiosity. It takes a little bit of like, F you. I'm going to be who I'm supposed to be. And I'm so plugged into my identity that I don't really care if you approve of this. I'm not going to conform to your expectations. So when I hear that and I hear the story that you unpacked and the heaviness of that we've walked through together, and you can look back and say, you might not have expected me to come out the other side where I'm at. And I might not even be everything that you want me to be. But man, you might see me as a crooked stick. But hey, check me out, man. I can draw a straight line too. So you can take this divergent, crazy ass person that is me, and yeah, I can draw a pretty straight line for you. So maybe you judging me by how crooked you think I am with my creative divergent ways, I can still get it done. Just check it out. And I love that. That might sound a little bit rebellious. I don't think it's rebellious. I think there's a lot of joy and freedom in embracing something that flies in the face of anyone else's expectations. And it's very liberating to realize it doesn't really matter what other people expect you to be because they aren't the one that knows you and they aren't the one that's set you up for this purpose that you're living into. So I love that concept of divergence because it's when you really unpack it, it can feel lonely at times and it will be lonely at times. But if you're being authentically creative, who cares? I think it's a lot more fulfilling to just know that you are being you, the truest form of you. So knowing yourself and changing with that evolution of who you are and that transformation is so powerful. And you have to be divergent. You need that. And I really encourage leaders to not just give lip service to it, to really press into their people, whether you're just leading your family, press into your children, that you love how beautifully different they are. That you love that each one of them has their own thumbprint on life that only they can leave. Like use those analogies to encourage their beauty in their difference. Because it is a beautiful thing. So,
Step away and let them be
yeah.
whatever that looks like for them.
I mean, Ludacris told you the best. Move, bitch, get out the way. So go listen to Luda, and maybe he was being more prophetic than you realize. You should probably do that. All right. So if you walked away from this podcast and said, I wish Josh wouldn't have rambled on about divergence and would have asked me this instead, what would that question be that you would want to be asked, and how would you respond to it?
I think it's kind of a big one, and I think it's kind of one of those that like you zoom out when you tackle this one, but it's why does any of this matter? Does human creativity matter? And I think I stumbled upon this little chat that Ethan Hawke, the actor,
Oh, he's good.
yeah, and
He's good.
I mean, yeah, it's so solid, and it really really resonated with me. And I think take the source, whatever. He's an actor, like I think of course he thinks that creativity matters. It's his livelihood, right? But so much of what he said, I just think is so beautiful. So I'm gonna read a little bit of what he said, if that's okay with you.
Please do.
It might be a little long.
I actually know what you're talking about. I've seen it before we even discussed it, and it's
God, it's so beautiful.
it's worth reading. Go for it.
It's so beautiful. I'm not going to do it any justice. Like I'm sure his voice and his, whatever, but you can look it up online and enjoy it with all the movie clips and all the, music in the background. But this is the concept. So you have to ask yourself, do you think human creativity matters? Most people don't spend a lot of time thinking about poetry, right? They have a life to live, and they're not really that concerned with Allen Ginsberg poems or anybody's poems until their father dies. They go to a funeral, you lose a child, somebody breaks your heart, they don't love you anymore. And all of a sudden, you are desperate for making sense out of this life. And has anybody ever felt this bad before? How did they come out of this cloud? Or the inverse, something great. You meet somebody and your heart explodes. You love them so much you can't even see straight. You're dizzy. Did anybody feel like this before? What is happening to me? And that's when it's art, and creating is not a luxury. It's actually sustenance. We need it. Okay, well, what is it? And he goes on to say there's this thing that worries me sometimes whenever we talk about creativity, because it can have this kind of feel that it's just nice, or it's warm and it's something pleasant. And it's not. It's vital. It's the way we heal each other, in singing our song, in telling our story, and inviting you to say, hey, listen to me, and I'll listen to you. We're starting a dialogue. And when you do that, this healing happens. And we come out of our corners and we start to witness each other's common humanity. We start to assert it. And when we do that, really, really good and beautiful things happen. And he goes on to say, so if you want to help your community, if you want to help your family, if you want to help your friends, you have to express yourself. And to express yourself, you have to know yourself. And that it's not really as hard as we make it, because you just follow your love. And there is no path. There is no path until you walk it. And I just think that concept in general just like sums up kind of how I view just creativity in general, and just the beauty beyond yourself that's in it. I think when you push past all the individuality and originality and all of that stuff, like at the heart of creativity is just this connection.
Mhm.
And it's so healing. And I think just start, right? Just start ugly, start often. Um, and then just watch the connection and watch the healing happen, like in yourself and in those relationships around you. And it's just
Mm.
really beautiful.
I love that.
And yeah,
No, I love that picture that it just painted of, we've said it a lot throughout this episode, but I really, I really wish people, and you and me included at times, can just really remember how beautiful their originality is to this earth. Because in an effort to try and be like anyone else, you are robbing yourself and humanity and life in general of something that no one else can ever bring. So the comparison trap is such BS. Get out of it if you're in it. And the quickest way to get out of it is to embrace who you are and to try and deepen the understanding of your actual purpose and your gifts, because I promise you they exist. And again, to just share those things when you see it in others, because that may never have been a connection for a lot of people until now, but I hope they take that away from this time that they've spent with you, is that encouraging and calling out the gifts and the qualities that you see in others, and maybe even use the word, this creative thing or this thing that you've helped create, connect it to creativity for them, because it is the originality that only they can bring and no one else ever has or ever will. There is there is a beautiful snowflake, not in the funny way of using it. There is a beautiful snowflake effect of everyone. Like, you have your own DNA. It's even in the imprint of your physical traits. There's so much about you that no one else will ever have. But that goes down to the core of you, much more than just the surface DNA and fingerprints. That is the heart of who you are, is meant to create and to exist like no one else ever has or ever will. And that's a fact, Jack. So the quicker we all, and myself included, I've been challenged by this. So thanks, in a good way. Just like, it's so much better to just embrace you for who you are, and then
yeah,
also embrace others for who they are
yeah,
completely. Just love them and embrace them where they're at in this journey of transforming into the truest version of who they were created to be creatively. Um,
yeah,
and encourage each other in that. Don't judge them for it. Don't hate on them when they're missing the mark or when they aren't fitting the bill you want them to, because they shouldn't do that anyway.
yeah.
Um, that's a beautiful thought. And he's got some really good stuff out too. He's got a great book, Rules for a Night, that I've shared with other people and with our nephews. So Ethan Hawke has some pretty cool background. Go check him out. He comes from a lineage of actual like knighthood, and has spent a lot of time talking with his ancestors about this virtuous living. So he's got some really cool, succinct things that he's published, which is really cool. But that's just, yeah, that's a really cool way to land the plane on why does it matter. Thanks for that.
I thought it was
So,
so beautiful. It
oh,
resonates with people.
I really do too. Before I close this out, over to you for any last thoughts or words you want to share with our guests before we sign off with this.
Man, I don't think I have anything else.
You
I think we wrapped it up. Just
sure did.
go make something beautiful or ugly. Just go make something.
Just go make it.
Just go make.
Just go make.
Maybe
Go
not
do
that.
it. Maybe try again. Keep working at it. To Laura and my girls, as with every episode, this is part of my creativity and things I'm trying to do, but I do it for y'all. So, of course, you know that your sister-in-law or your aunt, respectively, loves you, but man, I love y'all so much, and this is for you. So, hopefully, one day, again, this is a fun one because you know Micah so well, but you can look back on these things and see that part of my effort to embrace my own creativity and the own gifts and talents that I feel like I've been given. The purpose is converged on you, and it is to try and love you and give you something that can be a resource. So, Micah, for you, I love you so much. I'm so glad that we could do this. This has been fun. And it's
Love you so much.
been very true to form. Now, y'all got us in a tempered form too. This isn't even really that bad. So
Just to bring this full circle right now, there is currently right now a cricket crawling across my kitchen floor that definitely got loose from the bearded dragon. And so I'm gonna turn this off and go catch that cricket now.
Thanks for joining us, y'all. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Off the Hinges. Don't forget to follow Foundational Coaching on your favorite social media platforms. Kick off your Saturday with me tomorrow morning at Coffee and Reflections on Substack, where I'll share my reflections and stories on the weekly virtue. I'm honored to be a part of your story today, and I'm proud of your growth, my friend. I can't wait for our next time together, exploring the vault.